Hello, Drive Tribe, and a big hello to the Custom and Hot Rod Life Tribe. I'm Chris Breeden, and today I'll be introducing you to street rods. In order to understand where street rods first came from, we have to journey back to June of 1970. In that month's issue of Rod and Custom magazine, the editor, Bud Bryan, proclaimed that all roads led to Peoria, Illinois. I know that's a pretty strange statement, but there's a reason for his madness. You see the muscle car? It was dead. I know some of you are going to say, but what about this particular car? And this manufacturer wouldn't make this car until, and I'll concede that manufacturers would produce 3 or 4 more good muscle cars in the early 1970s. But in reality, the muscle car era started in '64, it peaked in '67, and it was over with by 1970. It had been a good 6-year ride, but pressure from insurance companies, federal emissions regulations, and Ralph Nader had almost ended the party. The fuel crisis would be the nail that sealed the coffin in the first era of factory horsepower. Since gearheads couldn't buy a powerful new car, the only option left was to build one. The only problem was no one wanted to hop up an overweight big bumper Nova or Charger. Gearheads would do a pretty common thing when any group is faced with a fundamental crisis. They look to the past to find a way forward. What they found was what had came before muscle cars: hot rods and custom cars. All those beautiful Model A's, Deuce Coupes, 36 and 40 Ford Coupes, and the 49 to 51 Fords and Mercuries were still around. You see, the best part about it is all those cars were still plentiful and cheap. You see, customs and hot rods, they never really die. They just go underground when a new era of factory horsepower comes around. The hot rod scene of the 1950s and the early 1960s had been a deathly thing. Kids were driving recklessly in cars that were never designed to have high horsepower engines in them. The mechanical brakes that most pre-World War II cars had in them were dangerous when new, and those brakes would become an even larger hazard when heavier, more powerful engines were placed in the engine bays. Street rodders set off with the lessons of the hot rod scene at the forefront of everything they would do, because no one wanted to repeat the carnage that had happened in the 1950s and 60s. And in order to combat that image, this new breed would operate under the idea that safety was paramount. They would change the very idea of what it meant to drive a hot rod. A good many 4 and 5-year-old muscle cars were going to get cut up to make this new breed of rod. Oh yeah, that business about Peoria, well, the very first Street Rod Nationals would be held there in August of 1970. It would be popularized by Rod and Custom magazine, but it would be run by a new organization called the National Street Rod Association, or the NSRA. Rodders came to Peoria from all over the United States and Canada. They didn't descend on the town like some mad pack of wolves. There was no tearing up the streets, no long smoky burnouts, and no red light drag racing. You see, street rodders know that those kinds of things are not a good test of any car. The real test of a home-built car is mile after mile of problem-free driving. I guess this is really just a long way of me telling you that a street rod is a car made in 1948 or before that typically has a newer V8 engine, transmission, front and rear suspension. They utilize a 21-point safety inspection, and they are not driven recklessly. They usually include things for driver comfort like heat and AC and audio equipment. The long way around? I'm pretty sure a street rodder would appreciate that. For the Custom and Hot Rod Life Tribe, on DriveTribe.com, I'm Chris Breeden. And thanks for hanging out. And always remember, keep on cruising.